Shen Shiji once pulled me out from a heap of corpses. Before I was acknowledged and brought back to the palace, he taught me how to read and fight, treating me with the utmost tenderness. Until the day I killed the woman he had loved for years. To avenge her, Shen Shiji married me as his imperial consort. He spent years crafting a web of schemes that turned everyone against me. After tormenting me in every possible way, he threw me back into that same pile of dead bodies. Shen Shiji said his greatest regret was saving me that day. So when I was reborn, I didn't wait. I crawled out of that corpse pile by myself. Later, I heard it had rained heavily that day. The aloof and noble young Lord Shen had knelt in the mud, his hands bloodied as he dug through the bodies. All for the sake of finding a little beggar girl. Shen Shiji still killed me. On the anniversary of Su Yuan's death, he used the very dagger stained with Su Yuan's blood and stabbed me, slowly, piece by piece. As if that weren't cruel enough, he twisted the blade inside me, his eyes bloodshot with hatred. "Why did you kill a Yuan?" he asked. He had asked me this countless times. And I had answered. I told him I didn't do it, but Shen Shiji never believed me. After all, everyone knew the peasant-born princess was madly in love with young Lord Shen. When she failed to force him into becoming her husband, she supposedly turned her love into hatred and murdered the woman he adored. Now, Shen Shiji asked this question only to find an excuse to keep driving that dagger deeper. His hand trembled, so much that even I noticed. But this was the same man who had once broken my limbs and tortured me without a hint of hesitation. So I smiled at him. "Shen Shiji, what are you afraid of?" Now a high-ranking grand tutor of the new dynasty, killing a fallen princess from the former reign should have been effortless. Everything he did was simply part of his plan to avenge Su Yuan. Shen Shiji pressed his lips together tightly, then suddenly let go of the dagger. He let me collapse back into the heap of corpses, his face once again void of emotion. "Shiji." He called my name, towering above me. "My greatest regret was saving you back then. I died, but somehow not completely." I saw Shen Shiji return and set fire to my former princess's residence. Everyone praised his righteousness, saying the remnant of the old dynasty had finally perished. Shen Shiji was always composed, until he saw the empress beside the new emperor, Brother Weiji. The resurrected Su Yuan called him sweetly, just like in the old days. Shen Shiji stared at her, unusually stunned into silence. I heard Su Yuan explain, her voice tinged with guilt, saying the dethroned emperor had been a debauched tyrant, driving the people to despair. She had no choice but to set Shen Shiji up, because he was talented and the new emperor had long wanted him on his side. But the Shen family held a hereditary noble title. Betraying the country was not something they would easily do. So she started a fire. "A Yuan owes Brother Weiji for this," she said, clutching Shen Shiji's hand with tear-filled eyes that shimmered with pitiful charm. "Whatever Brother Weiji wants from now on, a Yuan will make it up to you." There was something suggestive in her tone. I watched Shen Shiji stay silent for a long time. At last, his hoarse voice responded, "All right." And just like that, Su Yuan beamed through her tears, saying sweetly, "Brother Weiji, you're the best." He really was. I couldn't help thinking. So, Shen Shiji did love Su Yuan that much. He had always hated being lied to. I once tricked him on his birthday just to surprise him. But he gave me a cold face and never even accepted my gift. Turns out Shen Shiji could back down.
Just not for me. I should have been dead.
But when I opened my eyes again, I was lying in that corpse pile once more. The stench of rotting flesh mixed with the smell of blood made me gag before I could even think clearly. I was no longer the Princess Shiji. I was once again the beggar girl, 19 years old. "Shiji, my greatest regret was saving you that day." Shen Shiji's voice, still laced with hate, echoed in my ears. So I lay there for a moment, then gritted my teeth and crawled out of the pile, aching all over. Since I got out on my own, I owed Shen Shiji nothing. I was actually terrified of pain. but somehow I always seemed to be in pain. The North was at war, a great famine was spreading, and bandits ran rampant. Before he died, the old servant who cared for me had hidden me in that heap. But the bandits, wary as they were, had planned to burn all the bodies. In my past life, I tried to escape in a panic and was discovered. That was when Shen Shiji saved me. Saved me, only to kill me in the end. All I ever wanted was to live. So I clenched my teeth and crawled over corpse after corpse. But luck clearly wasn't on my side. I escaped the bandits, evaded Shen Shiji, only to run straight into Jiang Xiaobai, Shen Shiji's arch-nemesis and one of the most notorious scoundrels in the capital. Well, look what we have here, a filthy little stray cat still hiding. A young man dressed in silk sat atop his horse, playing with his riding whip, smirking down at me. But in that instant, I suddenly heard a voice, familiar yet distant. She's still a girl, after all. Bury her properly. Don't be disrespectful. The young general removed his bright red cloak and covered my broken, tattered body. He gave me a grave so I'd have a final place to rest. That was after my death. Back then, I had made things difficult for Jiang Xiaobai, all for Shen Shiji. Yet in the end, he was the only one who gave me a shred of dignity. For once, I felt like maybe luck had smiled on me, because I had run into Jiang Xiaobai, tiny as a kitten and just as useless. He muttered, seeing me staring blankly at him, likely thinking I was scared. He raised his whip again to frighten me, but suddenly a pouch of silver landed by my feet. Take the money and get lost. Don't block my way. My whole body ached so much I could barely stand, so I made a gamble. A corner of his red cloak hung from the saddle, and I clutched it tightly. Jiang Xiaobai instinctively paused and lowered his whip. Help me, please? My voice came out hoarse and barely audible. That was all the strength I had left. But I desperately wanted to live. Just before I passed out, I vaguely heard Jiang Xiaobai roar in outrage. This cloak cost me 1,000 taels of silver. 1,000 taels? Then he definitely got ripped off. That fabric isn't worth nearly that much. I couldn't help but think groggily as I faded into the dark. In the end, Jiang Xiaobai really did take me in. In his words, I had dirted the cloak he spent 1,000 taels of silver on, so I had to pay it back. And so I became a maid doing odd chores at his side. But truthfully, what mattered more was that Jiang Xiaobai suspected I had something to do with Shen Shiji. I heard the rain had poured heavily that day. The proud and untouchable young Lord Shen had knelt in the mud, digging through the corpse pile until his hands bled, then personally shot and killed the remaining bandits, all just to find a single beggar girl. When Jiang Xiaobai told me this, he couldn't help rubbing his chin and giving me a good once-over. Then he asked directly, "Was he looking for you?" Though it sounded like a question, his tone was full of certainty. After all, I was the only one who had survived that pile. But I wouldn't admit it. I simply gave a lazy smile, playing dumb like a pig unafraid of boiling water. I don't know. Jiang Xiaobai clicked his tongue in annoyance, but didn't press further. Later, I became one of Jiang Xiaobai's personal guards, because I found out the pay was better than that of a maid, and I needed to pay off my debt. At first, Jiang Xiaobai didn't believe I could fight. In his words, "You're the size of a kitten. Get caught in the wind, and you'd probably blow away. At most, you could punch someone in the chest or kick their shin. You probably wouldn't even dare kill a chicken." Until I pinned him to the ground with a broadsword to his throat and told him very seriously, "I really can fight. Hiring me won't be a loss." And just like that, Jiang Xiaobai lay there, doubting everything he knew about life. In my past life, after Shen Shiji took me in, they quickly realized I had a natural talent for martial arts. Shen Shiji once said I'd make a perfect blade, a weapon. If I hadn't been recognized as a lost princess and brought back to the palace, I probably would have ended up as a covert bodyguard in the Marquis's household. I wasn't very smart. Reading was hard, needlework hopeless. But when it came to martial arts, I gave it my all. Back then, I only wanted to protect Shen Shiji. but Shen Shiji wanted me to protect someone else. I stared at the sword in my hand, a little dazed. Then I thought optimistically, this isn't bad either. At least now, I get to choose who I want to protect. Jiang Xiaobai scrambled up from the ground, cursing as he went. He couldn't beat me, so he tried to rely on his status to suppress me. I've been feeding you all this time, and you still look like a scrawny stray cat. You haven't gained a bit of weight. Anyone who sees you would think I've been abusing you. He trailed off, eyes narrowing sharply before leaping up. Then, as if deeply wronged, he exclaimed, "Say it. Are you trying to make people think I mistreat you on purpose?
Wow.
You look all dumb and wooden on the outside, but turns out you're full of tricks inside. So scheming." I blinked a few times, taking a while to follow his train of thought. Then I explained earnestly, "No, it's because I can't gain weight." I explained myself a lot, even though no one believed me. Still, I always wanted to try. What if just once someone did? Jiang Xiaobai froze. He was the type to say things off the cuff. Probably didn't expect anyone would take his random words seriously and try to respond. After a pause, his expression turned complicated. "You actually believed that?" I nodded, then hesitated and shook my head. Maybe it was because of that burial in my last life. But I didn't want Jiang Xiaobai to misunderstand me. Jiang Xiaobai scratched his head, sighed long and hard, and finally looked a bit distressed.
Great.
"So now I've picked up a fool." I corrected him. "I just don't like lying." Jiang Xiaobai waved his hand vaguely to show he got the message. But from that day on, my food had a faint bitterness to it, like medicine. I didn't understand medicine. But back in the palace, I'd heard that some noble families fed their bodyguards herbs to control them. So I figured Jiang Xiaobai probably didn't trust me. It didn't hurt that much. Okay, maybe a little. But I didn't dare feel too disappointed. Until after some time I realized something strange. There was nothing wrong with my body. I rarely even caught colds anymore. I asked Jiang Xiaobai about it. "You've got some nerve asking me that." At first, Jiang Xiaobai played dumb. But after I asked a few more times, he glared at me, clearly irritated. Then, with a look of distaste, he turned away and muttered, "The medicine I gave you, heck, even a dog would have turned into a pig from all the nutrients.
But you?
You still look like a beggar off the street." He grumbled the last part under his breath. But I had sharp hearing. So now I knew that medicine was for nourishing my body. I pressed my lips together and told him seriously, "You're wasting those herbs on me." I just wanted to find a way to repay Jiang Xiaobai. But it felt like the more I tried, the more I owed. I didn't want to go back to that man-eating palace. But I couldn't afford to repay the cost of all those medicines either. Jiang Xiaobai didn't like hearing that. He glared at me. "What do you mean, waste? When I first brought you back, you were sick every few days. Now you can take down 4 of my guards on your own. That just proves I'm good at raising people. I can even report proudly to my parents, your son knows how to manage." I said nothing. I was busy calculating how I could pay all of it back. Jiang Xiaobai probably guessed what I was thinking. He clicked his tongue. "You're not seriously thinking I'm just a walking piggy bank, are you?" I looked up at him and nodded. The Jiang family's young master was indeed famous across Yongzhou for being a sucker. Take that thousand-tail cloak, for example. It came from a poor and unknown seamstress who couldn't even afford a doctor's fee. Jiang Xiaobai laughed out of sheer disbelief. "You're really a block of wood. Can't even lie to yourself when you insult your master." He was cursing, sure, but his eyes were full of laughter. Until I said, "My life isn't worth it. That much silver could buy dozens of girls like me." In my last life, Shen Shiji also hired doctors to treat me after he took me in. I knew he'd spent a lot of money. I wanted to live, but I didn't want to owe too much. When what you owe becomes more than you can repay, living starts to feel like a luxury, especially when all of Shen Shiji's kindness came with a price tag. I'd already learned that lesson the hard way. Then I saw the smile on Jiang Xiaobai's face slowly disappear. After a while, he pulled the corners of his mouth into a bitter curve and murmured, almost mockingly, That's why I hate this world so much, where human lives are worth less than grass. That's just the way the world was. Massacres happened everywhere. Life was the cheapest currency. I stared at Jiang Xiaobai quietly, thinking, this man carries a kind of gentleness that doesn't belong in a world like this. That's not necessarily a good thing. But it's fine. Either way, I'll protect Jiang Xiaobai. If he doesn't dare kill, then I'll do it for him. Jiang Xiaobai never waited for my reply. After a moment of thought, he suddenly smiled. If you're so desperate to repay me, then help me with something. Okay. I agreed without hesitation. And just like that, Jiang Xiaobai went back to being his usual careless self. That moment of heaviness from before felt like something I must have imagined. Jiang Xiaobai had come to Yongzhou to visit his maternal grandfather. He ran into Shen Shiji again on the way back to the capital. When the two groups met on the road, I should have avoided him. But then a band of rogue soldiers blocked the path, followed by black-clad assassins. Jiang Xiaobai cursed under his breath. Had to be that bastard Shen Shiji who drew them in. He always believed he had great connections. In both the capital and Yongzhou, there shouldn't be a soul willing to target him. He told me to stay put in the carriage and not get involved. Said that fighting and killing didn't suit girls. I didn't reply, just quietly gripped the hilt of my sword. The enemy had clearly come prepared. Even while cursing Shen Shiji, Jiang Xiaobai still went to save him. A long sword lunged toward Jiang Xiaobai, and Shen Shiji, standing right beside him, saw it happen. But he simply stood there, expressionless, not uttering a word, until I threw myself in front of Jiang Xiaobai. The blade pierced my shoulder, but I took the attacker's head in return. It was the simplest and most effective method, but the blood still splattered all over Jiang Xiaobai's clothes. I'd heard those clothes were quite expensive. Seeing the sudden dark look on his face, I instinctively shrank my neck and muttered, "Actually, I was trying to protect you. Who the hell taught you to protect people by hurting yourself almost as badly?" Jiang Xiaobai grabbed me and stormed off, nearly grinding his teeth with anger. He looked like he wanted to say more, but was cut off by a trembling voice. "Ah, Jiao." Shen Shiji called out to me, his voice shaking. His eyes locked onto me, filled with the joy of someone who had just found what they thought they'd lost forever. It was rare for Shen Shiji to show such raw emotion in front of me. That man carried a nobleman's pride in his bones, no matter how well he usually pretended otherwise. To him, I'd always been just a beggar girl he'd once dragged from a pile of corpses. He had always been stingy with his trust. But now he stood right in front of me, his eyes red-rimmed, voice low and trembling with barely restrained emotion. "I found you." He wasn't hiding his feelings at all. The lofty young lord shouldn't have come all the way to the outskirts of Yongzhou for a lowly beggar. The celebrated gentleman of the capital shouldn't have stood by coldly while the one who once saved his life was under attack. Only Shen, the Grand Tutor, the man who had endured disgrace as an imperial consort and helped the new emperor topple the old dynasty, could do both. Suddenly, I remembered that single word he once said to Su Yuan. All right. I took a step back without thinking, and found myself shielded by Jiang Xiaobai. Shen Shiji stiffened. If you want a reunion, save it for later." Jiang Xiaobai cut in, his tone unusually cold. He walked me back to the carriage, shoulders squared as he slammed into Shen Shiji, forcing him aside. Then he casually threw back. "What, holding a grudge, so bad you've got to block the road? To outsiders, it'll look like the young lord is deliberately getting in the way to make the girls suffer more." His tone was lazy and mocking, but when I looked at him, I saw tightly pressed lips and a cold glint in his eyes I had never seen before. For a moment, I thought I glimpsed the future war god, the fearsome young general who would later dominate the battlefield. Shen Shiji stumbled from the impact. Somehow, something Jiang Xiaobai said must have struck a nerve. His face drained of all color, paler than mine, and I was the one wounded. He stood there in a daze, eyes locked on my retreating figure. His lips moved as if trying to speak, and after a long pause, he finally said, "I didn't," but the words lacked conviction. I turned slightly to glance at him, thinking, he's so good at pretending. He clearly loathes me, yet now he wears the face of someone heartbroken with worry. So, why did he come looking for me? I owed him nothing anymore. You into that pretty boy now? Jiang Xiaobai suddenly asked, voice sharp. He sneered, you've got terrible taste. I blinked at him, confused. Jiang Xiaobai looked even more annoyed, rubbing his temples before shoving me into the carriage. Then he snapped at me, we'll settle this later. Right before getting in, I caught him glancing down at his own body. Then, apparently satisfied, he muttered under his breath, that twig of a man, one punch, and I'd knock him out. What could she possibly see in him? What a clueless little block of wood, he growled. I hadn't fallen for Shen Shiji. I said it in my heart, very quietly. All I wanted was just to stay alive. Shen Shiji claimed he had come on my mother's request, that the moment of emotion when he first saw me had been a mistake. He quickly gathered himself, smiling gently as he said, Ah, Jiao, I've come to take you home. I looked at him and suddenly remembered. In my past life, I had waited a long time to hear those words. I lived at the Shen residence for 1.5 years before being brought into the palace. But with so many princes and princesses there, I was just the most forgettable one. The palace devoured people. My princess residence was cold and quiet. I kept hoping Shen Shiji would come and take me back. But I waited and waited, until the day he stormed into my residence with sword in hand, eyes full of rage, shouting, Why did you kill Yuan? That day, I nearly died under the blade of someone who didn't even know how to fight. I had no home, no one to come take me home. Jiang Xiaobai said nothing. To be precise, ever since I got injured that day, Jiang Xiaobai hadn't said a single word to me. But now, his silence suddenly made me anxious. So I reached out instinctively, grabbing the hem of his robe, just like the first time I met him, and clung to the edge of his cloak. I clutched it tightly and asked, You don't want me anymore? As soon as the words left my mouth, I realized how wrong they sounded. I licked my dry lips and rushed to add, I haven't paid you back yet for the silver, the medicine, and the task you gave me. I haven't finished it. My voice trailed off. And then it hit me. I kept saying I wanted to repay Jiang Xiaobai. But all I'd done was trouble him over and over again. Jiang Xiaobai stared at me in a daze. After a long pause, he turned away and swore under his breath. Then suddenly lifted his arm to cover his eyes. You're gonna be the death of me, blockhead. He said it softly, but I still heard it. And I saw the tips of his ears, hidden beneath his dark hair, turn red. Then he coughed and tried to act nonchalant. She doesn't want to go with you. His expression even carried a hint of pride. I thought Shen Shiji might push back, but instead, he just stared at my hand gripping Jiang Xiaobai's robe. And the light in his eyes dimmed, little by little. At last, he rasped out a word. All right. That didn't sound like Shen Shiji at all. My instincts told me he wouldn't give up so easily. He needed a reward for finding royal blood. The Marquis of Shen was famous for favoring concubines over wives. Though Shen Shiji was the heir, there were countless eyes in the household watching his every move. In my past life, Shen Shiji used that reward to secure his position and almost married the woman he loved. Given a second chance, he'd only be more cunning. So I became wary. Shen Shiji saw that wariness in my eyes. His body swayed as if he couldn't keep standing. His face had gone ghostly pale. And even the pride in his posture looked like it was being crushed. He coughed violently, yet still tried to pull up a gentle smile for me. As long as Ajio is happy, that's all that matters. But his reddened eyes looked like they might spill over with tears at any second. Shen Shiji fell ill. Jiang Xiaobai had no intention of traveling with him at first, but no matter how sick he was, Shen Shiji still forced himself to ride hard to keep up. In the end, it was one of his attendants who came to plead with Jiang Xiaobai. Jiang Xiaobai knew he was doing it for me, so he sent someone to ask for my opinion. He was still mad at me. Even passing messages had to be done through others. I thought it over. And when we stopped to rest, I quietly moved over to him. The first thing I said was honest. I was wrong. Heh. Jiang Xiaobai gave a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Amazing. You finally realized the crime you committed around the second watch 4 days ago. It took me a second to realize. That was when I got injured. I reached up to rub my still aching shoulder and softly muttered, Well, go on then. I shouldn't have let myself get hurt. Jiang Xiaobai let out a long, heavy sigh. Forget it, he mumbled to himself. What am I doing getting mad at a block of wood? He stretched lazily, then leaned back against a tree, turning his head to look at me with a slow smile. But you know, he added, this young master always finds a way to make a block of wood bloom. Wood doesn't bloom. I wanted to argue, but in that moment, I believed him. So I asked, Are you this kind to everyone? Ever since I started following Jiang Xiaobai, I noticed he was nothing like the people in the capital. He could get along with anyone. Scholars, farmers, merchants, even street beggars. He'd stop and chat like they were old friends. Jiang Xiaobai blinked at my question. He looked like he was actually thinking it over. After a moment, his expression eased into a smile. Of course. Why do you think I've got friends everywhere? You have to give to receive. That was what he said. But for a fleeting second, I felt a deep, aching loneliness from him. A kind of loneliness that lived outside the warmth of all human connection. Strange, really. But he quickly changed the subject. Hey, blockhead. I suddenly miss home. You mean home in the capital? Jiang Xiaobai paused, then smiled. Of course. But something told me he was lying. The day we parted, Shen Shiji came to see me. Ah, Jiu. He called out, then coughed violently. He was very ill. The unhealthy flush on his pale face made his sickness even more obvious. After calling my name, Shen Shiji didn't say another word. He just looked at me, quietly, with a gaze that held a trace of hope. So clear that anyone could see it. His illness came from the foul politics of the inner household in the Marquis' manor. He had once found someone to heal my body, so I had tried to find a way to cure his poison. I had even climbed a cliff to pick a rare herb for him, fell and broke my arm, but still brought it back to him with a smile. And yet, Shen Shiji had scolded me, said it was my fault for not staying with Su Yuan, that she got hurt because I wasn't there. In the end, that miracle herb, said to revive flesh and bones, was given to Su Yuan. Even though her injury was barely more than a scratch, Shen Shiji truly, deeply loved Su Yuan. I thought about that and walked past him without changing my expression. But just as I passed by, his hoarse voice sounded behind me, tightly restrained, trembling ever so slightly, as if awaiting punishment already long foreseen. You came back too, didn't you? The moment Shen Shiji finished speaking, I instinctively reached for the blade at my side. There was no one else around. Shen Shiji didn't seem to notice. He continued speaking softly, as if to himself. 19 was such a kind-hearted girl. She didn't dare kill. So, I deliberately put myself in danger. Forced her to draw her blade. That first night, she killed someone. She was so terrified she couldn't sleep. It was me who made her get used to it. 19 hated pain. When I first brought her back, even the smallest wound made her frown in discomfort. It was me who taught her to endure it, to keep quiet even when it hurt so badly she could barely breathe. 19 was soft-hearted. If she saw me like this, she'd definitely try to make me smile. And it was me who crushed that softness with my own hands, made her hate me. But that was the later Shizhou. So, Jiu, it's really you, isn't it? Shen Shiji's breath began to quicken. He seemed to be hoping for something, but buried deep in his eyes was nothing but blinding despair. My answer was the cold steel of my blade pressed to his throat. Expressionless, I said, I just want to stay alive. Everyone wanted me dead, but I wanted to live. When I was first reborn, I lived in constant fear, afraid I'd be branded a demon and burned for coming back from the dead. After realizing Shen Shiji was also reborn, I couldn't even sleep peacefully at night, terrified I'd wake up to find he had either killed me or dragged me back to that man-eating palace. If he wanted to destroy me, it would be easy. Even with this second life, I was still the same person I was before. I wasn't smart. I had no schemes. Without the palace, I was nothing but a beggar girl. I could fight, but Shen Shiji had countless skilled guards. An ant can't shake a tree, and someone like me, who just wanted to live, couldn't hold a blade sharp enough for revenge. The edge of my sword broke his skin. Blood beaded out, bright and sharp. I blinked back to awareness and instinctively moved to withdraw my blade. But Shen Shiji grasped the blade with his bare hand and slowly pushed it into his left shoulder. His already pale face turned ghost white. Is it because he found you first? Shen Shiji was smiling, but he looked like he was about to cry. His voice trembled, despite his effort to control it. But I went looking for you that day too. I wanted to bring Ajio home. I promised her I would. I looked everywhere for her. For a long, long time. I even killed those people. But none of them knew where my Ajio was. It was like he was trapped in a nightmare. He stepped closer to me, still gripping the blood-slick blade, letting the blood drip down. I quietly let go of the hilt and stepped back, avoiding his outstretched hand. Shen Shiji froze. After a long pause, he said in a low, dazed voice, almost childlike, "But, Jio, why didn't you wait for me?" What a strange question. So I looked at Shen Shiji and said, "You're the one who told me. The thing you regretted most was saving me that year. That's why I fought like hell to crawl out of that corpse pit on my own." Shen Shiji, I don't owe you anything anymore. Shen Shiji opened his mouth, but all he could force out, with great difficulty, were 3 words. I'm sorry. I shook my head. You don't have to pretend in front of me anymore. I wasn't completely dead that day. I saw Su Yuan. I heard what she said to you. She deceived you, and you forgave her. Shen Shiji clearly hadn't expected that I had witnessed it all. His breathing grew heavier, but the light in his eyes, it started to reignite, like a spark catching dry tinder. He sounded almost desperate. Then what happened next? Did you see what happened afterward? Because I actually... Why would there be a next part? I interrupted, puzzled. Wasn't all that enough? You burned my princess manor. You became the great and celebrated Grand Tutor Shen. Su Yuan is the empress now, and will reward you in every possible way. That's what I saw. And just like that, the light in his eyes dimmed again, fading into a kind of dead silence. So this is my punishment? He whispered. How cruel, how cruel. Shen Shiji's voice broke, not quite crying but choked with emotion. From a distance, someone was calling my name. I looked at Shen Shiji, who could barely stand. After a moment, I said quietly, I did want to kill you, but I was even more afraid of dying. I wasn't sure if he heard me, because all he did was lower his head, drive the blade deeper into his own shoulder, and then look up at me and smile. If Ajio is hurt too, then we'll be better matched. I think he even whispered, I love you. But in that moment, I couldn't help but think. Shen Shiji had gone mad. Jiang Xiubai brought me back to the general's manor. Honestly, being honest with Shen Shiji hadn't been the wisest choice. But I was feeling reckless. I thought if I was going to be dragged back to the palace in the end anyway, then I might as well let Jiang Xiubai have the credit. Maybe it would even help offset some of my debts. But I waited day after day at the general's manor. And not only did no one from the palace come for me, I instead heard that the young marquis of the Shen family had severed ties with his beloved childhood friend. Not long after, that girl's lover was accused of plotting treason. This time around, Shen Shiji had actually pushed Su Yuan to a dead end. They say that young Miss Su waited outside the marquis's estate for ages, but Shen Shiji wouldn't even grant her a glance. Jiang Xiubai told me this while sneaking glances at me, then gave me a lecture. Blockhead, when you pick a man in the future, you better open those eyes wide. You can't just go for a pretty face. You gotta consider the personality, morals, body. Everything's gotta be measured. I nodded slowly. I thought he was absolutely right. And I didn't find his words shocking in the least. Not for an ordinary girl, anyway. After all, whatever Jiang Xiubai said, I believed. Which clearly made him very pleased. Until his second sister's sharp voice suddenly rang out. Qingqiuer, are you filling Ajio's head with nonsense again? Qingqiuer was Jiang Xiubai's childhood name. They said when he was born, he was as tiny as a sparrow and frail to the point of death. The general's wife, worried he wouldn't survive, called him Little Sparrow for years, hoping the humble name would keep him alive. The moment Jiang Xiubai heard that name, he shot up in indignation, yelling, I told you not to call me that again. He always felt the name sounded too girly. Didn't suit someone as handsome and strapping as him. His second sister just snorted and grabbed him by the ear. Then turned to me and said, Don't take anything this guy says too seriously. He never speaks properly. Just listen and don't learn from him. I looked at Jiang Xiubai, who was grimacing dramatically, but with laughter in his eyes, and nodded. Then, when his sister wasn't looking, I silently mouthed at him. I got it. She patted my head, praising, Jio is such a good girl. Jiang Xiubai was overjoyed. Everyone at the general's manor treated me with such kindness. I figure it must have been because Jiang Xiubai had said or done something. But he denied it. He asked instead, Why can't it just be because you're a good person? Father says you've got talent in martial arts and work hard. He sees potential in you. Mother says you're sweet and obedient. She's never had anyone in the house she could really talk to, but you actually listen when she speaks. She's been a lot happier since you arrived. And second sister says if she had a daughter, she'd want one just like you. So, blockhead, why can't it be simply because you deserve it? I didn't answer. But in my heart, I thought, if I really was that good, then why didn't anyone like me in my past life? Well, maybe there was one. Jiang Xiubai's eldest sister. Now the imperial consort Jiang. She was the only one who had ever protected me in the palace. She was the one who told me, Little Jiu, if you can escape, then run far away from this palace that eats people alive. But I hadn't escaped, and neither had she. That once gallant daughter of the general's manor had died in that filthy harem. She was executed under false charges. The general's manor accused of treason. Consort Jiang accused of corruption and immorality. Later, the charges were overturned. The emperor shed a few tears, issued some posthumous honors and hollow titles, and the matter was buried. Thinking of all that, my body stiffened. Those forgotten memories from my past life came flooding back, and it felt like I was sinking into ice. At that moment, Jiang Xiubai had his head lowered, saying, Big sister can't leave the palace. So she sent some trinkets and fabric to the manor. It's all in my courtyard. I'll take you to Jiang Xiubai. I suddenly grabbed his arm, but when I opened my mouth, the words stuck in my throat. I was scared. Scared that if I spoke those words aloud, he'd think I was a monster. I had once seen someone in a village, a person wrongly thought to have risen from the dead, dragged off and burned alive. But in truth, the man had only been misdiagnosed by a careless doctor. What's wrong? Jiang Xiubai turned to look at me, his gaze as calm and steady as ever. And just like that, I quieted down. I reminded myself, this was Jiang Xiubai, whom I owed so much. This was the general's manor, where I had been treated better than anywhere else. So I heard myself speak, my voice scratchy and hesitant. I once had a dream. I still didn't dare tell Jiang Xiubai that I had come back from the dead. All I could do was fabricate a dream, racking my brain to recall what really happened that year. It all began with a deputy under General Zhang's command, a traitor who falsely accused the general's manor of colluding with the enemy. Imperial consort Jiang had gained too much favor, and the general himself held great military power and public support. Their accomplishments had long made them a thorn in certain people's side. The The downfall of the general's manor was inevitable. That's what an old servant on her deathbed once told me. And it was Shen Shiji himself who personally escorted that deputy into custody. I had once caught a glimpse of him from afar, back when I had gone to see Shen Shiji. That man had a scar on his left cheek, and a large mole under his chin. His surname was Zhang. I did my best to make this dream sound as detailed and convincing as possible. And there was that maid by consort Zhang's side, Lianxing. She wasn't loyal. She was the Empress's person. And later, she falsely accused the consort of. Halfway through, I suddenly stopped. I'd said too much. Far too much for it to sound like a dream. I pressed my lips together and cautiously looked up at Jiang Xiaobai. Even though it's just a dream, I said quietly. It felt like something that's about to happen. My voice trembled slightly. I didn't know if Jiang Xiaobai would believe me, and so my mind spun with worry. If he didn't, how would I deal with the coming disaster? I understand, but Jiang Xiaobai only let out a soft then reached out and gently patted my head. I'll look into those people for you. You just wait here in the manor for my news. I blinked in surprise. You believe me? Of course I believe you. Jiang Xiaobai grinned suddenly, then sighed in mock exasperation. If I didn't, you'd be working way too hard trying to convince me. Just that one simple sentence brought a sudden sting to my eyes. In that moment, I thought, if only I had met Jiang Xiaobai in my past life, right from the beginning, he would have believed me. And maybe I wouldn't have ended up the way I did. Why are you crying again? Jiang Xiaobai panicked. He fumbled around looking for a handkerchief, flustered as he tried to explain. I didn't mean anything by it. If you don't like hearing stuff like that, I won't say it anymore. His voice got smaller and smaller. Finally, he shut up completely, pulled out a pouch of snacks, and carefully asked, "Want some?" I don't know when it started, but Jiang Xiaobai had begun carrying sweet treats with him. He said the guards following him were too skinny, made even him look bad as their master. I nodded. My eyes were still red. I wasn't sure whether it was from fear of being exposed, or because of that one sentence Jiang Xiaobai had said. But either way, he looked visibly relieved. He lay back on a recliner, hands folded behind his head, gazing quietly up at the sky. Even after I finished the snack, he stayed in the same position. "Blockhead," he said, tilting his head toward me, eyes sparkling with a playful smile. "I actually really want to go home." "You're already at the general's manor," I replied. "Not this home." Jiang Xiaobai laughed and pointed at the sky. "My real home is far, far away. So far that maybe I'll never get back there in this lifetime." I froze. And before I could stop myself, I asked, "Don't tell me, are you a celestial being?" Jiang Xiaobai burst into laughter, clutching his stomach. "Well, now that you mention it, maybe I am," he said playfully. "People from my place can fly through the skies and dive into the seas. To you folks, I suppose that does sound like immortals. We're the same, you and I." He stood up, reached as if to pinch my cheek, then seemed to remember something, and his fingers curled back. In the end, he only bent down slightly and brushed the back of his cool hand lightly against my cheek. Then, looking at me seriously, he said softly, "So, little cat, don't be afraid." Jiang Xiaobai always said I was like a cat, a skinny, timid, overly delicate cat, one carved out of wood. Jiang Xiaobai came back. It hadn't actually been that long, but it felt to me like ages had passed. I stayed close by his side, so close that Jiang Xiaobai teased, "What? Did you fall for me or something?" I didn't say a word, just quietly looked at him, watched as the smile slowly faded from his face, and a sudden flush crept up his sun-darkened cheeks. He scratched his hair, stumbling over his words. "Why you actually like me, huh?" Before I could even reply, he was already talking to himself again. "Honestly, it makes sense. I mean, I look good, have a great personality, decent morals too. Even a wooden block would fall for me." By the time he reached the end of that sentence, His tone was full of smug satisfaction. If only his face weren't turning even redder. But the truth was, I didn't know what it meant to like someone. So I asked Jiang Xiubai, what counts as liking someone? Shen Shiji had said he was fond of me once after I died, once after I was reborn. But he killed me. His so-called affection only made me feel worse. Jiang Xiubai caught on right away that something was off. His guard immediately went up. Someone said something like that to you? I didn't want to lie to him, so I gave a soft, "Which little bastard dared steal a march on me while I was gone?" He rolled up his sleeves, muttering curses. If I catch him, I'll hang him on the city wall for 3 or 4 days. He looked so ridiculous in his outrage that it swept away the shadows in my heart left by that dream. I couldn't help but let out a small smile. So, do you think he really liked you? Jiang Xiubai asked, grinning again. I paused to think, then slowly shook my head. He nearly got me killed, then said he was wrong, that he actually liked me. Then that definitely wasn't love. Jiang Xiubai said it without hesitation. Afraid I wouldn't understand, he added. Take Chongqing for example. He really likes you. That little rascal barely talks to anyone, but in front of you, he puts on all kinds of puppy-eyed tricks, just to make you like him more. Chongqing was Jiang Xiubai's second sister's son. Jiang Xiubai snorted, then couldn't help but smile. The other day, my brother-in-law brought back pastries from Furong Tower. Chongqing thought they were delicious, so he snuck one away just to give it to you. I remembered that day. Chongqing brought the pastry, and when he unwrapped the cloth and saw it crushed, he cried in such a pitiful little way that even I had to laugh. You see, Jiang Xiubai continued, even kids know that when you like someone, you save them the best treats. Try your hardest to make them happy. There's no such thing as hurting someone because of a misunderstanding when it comes to real love. If you're getting hurt, then that person doesn't really love you. He leaned on one knee, looking straight into my eyes, a playful glint in his gaze. Remember this, little blockhead. If you can't even feel the affection yourself, then it's not love. I looked into Jiang Xiubai's pale eyes and saw a small reflection of myself in them. Saw on his all-too-familiar face a smile softer and lighter than I'd ever seen before. I turned away, suddenly flustered, and after a long pause, I said quietly, I don't have a name. Like Jiang Xiubai, I almost didn't survive infancy. But unlike him, I wasn't nearly as lucky. I was born on the 19th day of the 12th lunar month, so my mother just casually called me Shizhou. She didn't even bother giving me a proper name. She didn't think I'd live long enough to need one. Later, I entered the palace. I was just a daughter selected to be used as medicine for the emperor. No one thought it necessary to give me a real name, and so I was called Shizhou. From beginning to end, I never had a name that truly belonged to me. Jiang Xiubai froze, apparently confused why I was suddenly telling him all this, until I shyly asked, So, Jiang Xiubai, could you give me a name? He opened his mouth, but I continued on my own. Actually, I think the surname Jiang sounds really nice. I looked at Jiang Xiubai, not realizing how much hope I'd let seep into my voice. Would that be okay? Jiang Xiubai took a deep breath, then sat upright and teased. You sure? If you take my surname, then you'll officially be mine. He was clearly trying to go back to his usual easygoing self, but his voice trembled ever so slightly. I blinked in confusion. Aren't I already your bodyguard? Aren't bodyguards yours, too? You really are a block of wood. Jiang Xiubai choked on his own breath, then laughed softly under it. He patted my head, coaxing gently.
Fine.
I'll take on the task, but naming someone is a big deal. I'll have to talk it over with my parents and sister. After all, we'll be a family someday. A family? My eyes lit up instantly. Then I smiled with my lips pressed together. I finally had a family, and someone who'd come to take me home. But I still didn't get the name Jiang Xiubai promised to give me. A single imperial decree arrived at the general's manor, and I was summoned back to the palace. The emperor shed a few crocodile tears, took my hand, and pretended to be heartbroken as he said I had suffered all these years. Everything seemed to be repeating my past life all over again. And yet I had tried so hard to avoid this. I was trapped in the palace, forced to drink those unbearably bitter medicines again. The current emperor sought immortality. He feared death, so he needed someone to test the medicine. The court sorcerer claimed that the requirements for a test subject were extremely strict, that it had to be someone of his own bloodline. Among all the princes and princesses in the palace, I alone was deemed the most suitable test subject. So they called me Sergio. But I had been so close to having a name of my own. Consort Jiang came to visit me. She looked a great deal like Jiang Xiaobai, especially in the way she fussed over feeding me. All that precious flesh my family worked so hard to fatten up, ruined by that bastard. She pinched my cheeks, her teeth clenched in fury for a moment before she softened and coaxed. Eat just one more piece. Look at you, your skin and bones. She didn't know about the testing. She just thought I wasn't adjusting well to palace life. She comforted me. Once your residence as a princess is assigned, I'll ask Qingqiuer to come stay with you. Perhaps to avoid any trouble, the emperor ordered tight surveillance over me. Even Consort Jiang could only visit me on rare occasions. So I smiled at her and nodded. Okay. Just wait a little longer, I told myself. Once I leave the palace, everything will be fine. It was like this in my past life too. I just had to endure a bit longer. That's what I kept thinking, yet I still couldn't stomach the bitterness of medicine. I should have been used to it. But I remembered the medicine hidden in food. I remembered Jiang Xiaobai's pouch of candied fruits he always carried with him. And I realized I missed Jiang Xiaobai. Missed him very, very much. I started counting the days until I could leave the palace. But as time went on, the emperor showed no signs of granting me the right to move into my princess residence. And Consort Jiang was confined to the Sui River Hall, forbidden to leave. The amount of medicine delivered to me each day kept increasing. The emperor seemed increasingly desperate. This shift unsettled me, until one day, a newly favored concubine entered the palace, noble Lady Su, and I finally understood the source of my unease. It was Su Yuan. Only then did it hit me. Su Yuan probably knew who I really was. After all, she had once been Shen Shiji's most trusted confidant. The day Su Yuan came to see me, I had just been forced to swallow 2 bowls of medicine, my body aching all over. How pitiful, she said, gazing at me with an expression I couldn't decipher. Pity, perhaps. Shen Shiji didn't come for you. That young lord from the general's manor couldn't get in either.
You see?
You can't count on men. You can only count on yourself. I didn't want to talk to Su Yuan, but I had to admit, her last sentence was spot on. So I smashed the bowl and stabbed the porcelain shard straight into Su Yuan's chest. I do have to count on myself, I said in a low voice. Which is why I have to take revenge myself. But the medicine had weakened me. I used every last bit of strength I had, and all I managed was to give Su Yuan a flesh wound and draw a bit of blood. You lunatic! She screamed in pain. Palace maids rushed over to pull me away. I tilted my head, watching her, hair disheveled, face twisted in rage, so far from her former grace and elegance, and I couldn't help but laugh. I figured it must be because of Jiang Xiaobai. He'd made me so much braver than before. And that was a good thing. The palace was thrown into chaos. The emperor suddenly fell gravely ill. The position of crown prince had remained vacant for years, and now the princes began vying openly and secretly for the throne. This hadn't happened in my past life. Before long, the 3rd prince staged a coup. The day of the uprising, Shen Shiji found me. It was the first time I'd seen him since returning to the capital. Once a paragon of virtue, the refined young marquis now exuded a cold and murderous aura. Yet when he saw me, his whole demeanor softened into the familiar gentle smile I once knew. "Ah, Gio," he said, carefully reaching out his hand. "I've come to take you away." I sat there quietly, watching him. Watched his fingers flinch, saw him awkwardly call my name again. "Ah, Gio." "It's not safe here," Shen Shiji said hoarsely, his eyes red. "Let me take you away first. When this is all over, I'll send you back to wherever you want to go. But I don't want to go with you. I shook my head. Jiang Xiaobai told me he'd come to take me home. I believe him. So I'll wait for him. But I found you first this time. Shen Shiji took a few steps forward, voice choked. Ah, Gio, people make mistakes. Are you really not going to give me a chance to make it up to you?
That's so cruel to me.
And I thought Jiang Xiaobai was right. He would never hurt me just because he made a mistake. But if Jiang Xiaobai can't find me, wouldn't that be cruel to him? Shen Shiji's body went rigid. I smiled at him. Don't call me Ah Jiao anymore. My name isn't Shijio. I have a name of my own now. A name, he murmured. Yes, I'm called. I stopped mid-sentence. Annoyed, I suddenly remembered I hadn't gotten the name from Jiang Xiaobai before I was taken back to the palace. But in the very next moment, a familiar voice finished my sentence with a smile. Sun Wan. Her name is Jiang Sun Wan. Jiang Xiaobai really did come to take me home. I just went to fetch the antidote and you beat me to it, he said, lifting his chin at me with a teasing expression. What are you spacing out for? Get over here, quick. So I nearly skipped as I ran toward him, only to be grabbed by Shen Shiji. I instinctively tried to pull my hand free, but he held on tightly. Ah, Jiao, he called stubbornly, staring at me unblinkingly. Even you, are you going to abandon me too? His voice trembled with helpless pleading. He was injured, his wounds deep to the bone. I felt like I should hate Shen Shiji. And yet, in this moment, he just looked terribly pitiful. After a pause, I said, I heard you say you were fond of me. Shen Shiji froze. His grip slackened slightly. I continued, but someone else told me, if even I couldn't feel that affection myself, then it couldn't really be love. You saved me once, though even that was for your own sake, but still, you let me live. You taught me how to fight. At least for a time, I was genuinely happy. But Shen Shiji, I still want to kill you. But you can't kill him, Jiang Xiaobai said as he walked over with a sneer. He's the second prince's favorite now. The third prince had rebelled, and the second prince had quelled the coup.
It was all a show.
Jiang Xiaobai grabbed Shen Shiji's wrist and twisted sharply until I heard bones snap. Shen Shiji grunted. Then his arm fell limp. I sighed, regretfully. Guess I'll let it go then. I'm dying, Shen Shiji said calmly. He looked at me deeply and suddenly smiled. Your hands won't have to get dirty. I blinked in confusion. Why was he dying now? He took a poisoned arrow for the second prince, Jiang Xiaobai said as he squeezed my hand and looked down at me. I hate to say it, but he used his life to ask the second prince to ensure your peace and happiness for the rest of your life. I thought you wouldn't tell her that, Shen Shiji said with a wry smile. Jiang Xiaobai sneered, his eyes full of mockery. I'm not you. This time, Shen Shiji fell silent. But I won't thank you, I said, turning to him and speaking softly. You saved me, but you also killed me. I'm afraid of pain, and you never stopped hurting me. That's enough. Shen Shiji coughed violently. His sleeve was soaked with blood. He looked dazed, yet he still smiled at me. That's good enough. I turned away, tugged Jiang Xiaobai's sleeve, and said I wanted to leave. Then I asked, what antidote were you talking about earlier? Stupid wooden head. Jiang Xiaobai gave my head a light smack and handed me a porcelain bottle. After all that poison testing, you really think you didn't ingest any real toxins? Obviously, you need an antidote. Here, take it. I gave a quiet oh and took it. It didn't taste bitter at all, it was sweet, like candy. It was the sweetest thing I'd had in a long time. So I couldn't help but ask, is there more? I turned to Jiang Xiaobai and was met with a splash of red. I froze. Looking down, I finally noticed that the bottle was stained with dark red blood. The color was too close to the porcelain for me to have noticed right away. Why so greedy? My little wooden cats turned into a glutton. Jiang Xiaobai was still smiling, but blood was flowing steadily from his nose and mouth. A chill shot through my whole body. Jiang Xiaobai, I whispered, my voice shaking. My vision blurred. Why are you bleeding? Jiang Xiubai brushed the blood from his face carelessly. It's just the heat. Got too much internal fire. I'll take some herbs when I get back. No big deal. There was no antidote, Shen Shiji said as he walked out of the hall. He glanced at Jiang Xiubai, then lowered his eyes. He tested everything on himself, bit by bit, to recreate an antidote for you. You could have just shut up, Jiang Xiubai muttered, rolling his eyes. Then, turning to me, he softened his voice. Don't cry. I'm not going to die. I've made the antidote once. I can do it again. He tried to wipe my tears, but when he saw the blood on his hand, he awkwardly pulled it back. In the end, all he could do was stammer. Don't cry anymore. Seeing you cry, it breaks my heart. Shen Shiji just looked at Jiang Xiubai with a complicated gaze and said nothing. You're lying. I was trembling all over. I dug my nails into my palms just to keep my voice steady. If you could really make another antidote, why didn't you take it first? Jiang Xiubai was speechless. After a long silence, he sighed and smiled faintly. You act all slow and clueless, and now your brain's suddenly working overtime? Enough, he said, before I could speak again. He held my hand and started walking forward. I'll take you out of here first. Don't worry, the worst pests always live the longest. I'm not going anywhere. Besides, I've lived long enough. I'm tired of it anyway. That last sentence was spoken very quietly. Jiang Xiubai still lied to me. He had been struck by an arrow. In order to quickly make the antidote for me, he even increased the dosage. Now, the combination of the arrow wound and the poison spreading through his body had reached its peak. As we neared the palace gates, a large group of guards suddenly swarmed in. They far outnumbered the people Jiang Xiubai had brought. They were under the third prince. Someone must have reported us, but it didn't matter anymore. The soldiers surrounded us completely, just waiting for a single command. Though I'm really unwilling, I think I'll have to break my promise, Jiang Xiubai said, breathing heavily but still smiling. But it's a good thing we're almost there. You only need to walk that last stretch by yourself. I couldn't say anything. I just kept wiping the blood off him, over and over again. Enough. Jiang Xiubai caught my hand and chuckled. Such a pretty girl. Don't go getting yourself all dirty now. Even speaking had become hard for him. He pushed me gently forward, coaxing, You go first. I'll come find you in a bit. But this time, I didn't believe him. He must have sensed it too and sighed heavily. Fine, fine. At least I was good to you. That 1,000 taels of silver I spent on you, it was worth it. Even now, he still had the heart to joke. They say the soul returns home when it's time. Looks like I get to go home after all. Aren't you happy for me? I knew exactly what Jiang Xiubai meant by home. So I didn't say a word and tried to lift him again. Talk to me, he said, tugging on my sleeve, looking at me with a pleading softness. It's been so long since I saw you. No one else is around. We can finally have a good chat. Even though we were surrounded by soldiers, he insisted no one was around. My nose stung. My voice choked. What do you want to hear? Jiang Xiubai's eyes lit up. His whole expression turned bright. Anything. For example, has anyone bullied you? If they have, you tell me, I'll get revenge for you. Or maybe what my eldest sister said to you. She's awful, always exposing my embarrassing stories. I didn't see who charged first. Jiang Xiubai didn't kill, but now his blade was soaked in blood. He kept talking, but his voice grew weaker and weaker. So in the gaps between attacks, I quickly hoisted him onto my back and tied us together tightly. What a rough little girl, he muttered. He could no longer hold a sword. His eyes closed, and he hummed softly with a smile. But what can I do? You're the only one I like. Jiang Xiubai, I said quickly, afraid he would pass out. What do you actually want me to say? If I weren't killing people, this might have been a beautiful moment. What do I want to hear, huh? Jiang Xiubai perked up again. Then he leaned close to my ear and whispered, I want to hear whether An really likes me or not. I stabbed someone who tried to hurt him, and instead of answering, I said, Jiang Xiubai, I've done the thing you once asked me to do. Long ago, Zhang Xiubai had asked me to do something for him. Then tell me, what is the reason you fought so hard to stay alive? All right. I had been searching for that reason, and now I had found it. So I answered slowly, one word at a time. I want to walk from the south to the north. I want to see the world. A long time ago, Consort Zhang once told me about her mischievous little brother. That brat couldn't sit still for even a moment. Always wanted to go out, kept yelling about wanting to walk from the south to the north and see everything. Though she said it with mock annoyance, her eyes were filled with affection. She said most of what she'd seen in life came from his stories. So I remembered it. But I'm timid. I want someone to go with me. I'm also spoiled, so whoever goes with me has to be Zhang Xiubai. Only Zhang Xiubai. Zhang Xiubai, I'm really afraid of dying. But I'm even more afraid of you dying first. Zhang Xiubai blinked, then let out a muffled laugh. That's a great answer. Just the kind I like. But, you silly wooden block. You got one thing wrong. We're both not going to die. I softly murmured. The blade in my hand had dulled, so I switched to a new one. Wave after wave of soldiers charged. And wave after wave, they fell. I lost track of how many I'd killed. I only knew I was carrying Zhang Xiubai and inching slowly toward the palace gates. Zhang Xiubai once said he was just a paper kite drifting outside of this world. And I was the one who had once shown him where the string led. That metaphor was too lofty for me.
I didn't really understand.
But I knew this. I was a bodyguard who owed Zhang Xiubai a mountain of silver. I had to bring him home. The sky was starting to lighten. I vaguely heard reinforcements approaching, someone shouting anxiously to ask how I was. But my vision was clouded by blood. I couldn't see clearly. Until something hard poked my cheek. I instinctively turned my head. And this time, I saw it clearly. It was a flower. A flower carved from wood blooming in a sea of blood. The wooden block has bloomed. Zhang Xiubai murmured, his voice faint as a whisper, but still filled with a smile. On one, we're going home now.
Epilogue.
Zhang Xiubai was taken away by his master, a wandering Taoist who, I heard, had once anchored his soul when he was a child. When he saw me, the Taoist laughed heartily. I always wondered why that brat's soul was so restless. Turns out it went to find you. This whole business of defying fate and going upstream, who knew he actually made it work? Astonishing. Simply astonishing. I understood what the Taoist meant, and somewhere deep down, a bold guess took root. But I wanted to hear Zhang Xiubai say it himself. When will I see him again? Why do you want to see him? The old Taoist asked, smiling with squinted eyes. This time, I didn't hesitate. Because I love him. And if that means waiting a lifetime, then I'll wait a lifetime. The Taoist laughed even louder. Then wait for him. He left with Zhang Xiubai, disappearing to who knows where. The Zhang family comforted me, saying to treat it like he had just gone off traveling again. So I waited through spring and autumn, until I officially became part of the Zhang family. Until I became the undefeated general on the battlefield in Zhang Xiubai's place. The following spring, I went outside Yongzhou. It used to be a land of the dead. Now it was 10,000 acres of fertile fields. I sat there, propping my chin with my hand, watching quietly. A child playing nearby splashed mud all over me. The family rushed over, terrified, apologizing profusely. I waved them off. But after they left, I frowned a little. This outfit had been handpicked by Zhang Xiubai. He said I looked perfect in it, like it matched him exactly. I sighed. Guess I'd have to head home early to change. But when I turned around, I froze. A familiar voice sounded behind me, soft and teasing. Who's this filthy little kitten? Looks pretty pitiful. Standing in my way like this. Why don't you just come home with me? The end.